I'm in Europe at the moment. Unfortunately, I cannot really come to North America. The US is even more difficult, but even Canada, where we have a large property, they are still having the 14 days quarantine for European travelers. And as Troy said earlier before, I don't have time to be 14 days in a quarantine.
Yeah.
That's right.
Very true.
All right, quick plug. This is the Harbecke. Ladies and gentlemen, check it out. This rock is absolutely incredible. It has a lot to do with introducing the fourth rock type after Minister Dirk's show and segment. We're going to dive into geology. Please support the Magma Chem Research Institute as we are doing everything we possibly can to spread the information. That's it. It's just endless. You dive as deep as you can, and it just gets better and better and more predictable and more crazy. It's amazing. This rock, please. That would be awesome. All right, that's my plug. Agreed. I think a lot of people. So, Dirk, tell us a little bit. I remember our first phone call, you basically started, I want to say around 2008 or 2010. What was it when that you really got into, catching this wave of lithium? We're now seeing it. You were catching the wave back when it was coming in. How did that all go? That's awesome.
Well, I've built up a few companies during my life so far. So I started originally with a large internet company in Europe. Then I've built a banking group in sub-Saharan Africa and was investing also quite a lot in copper and in gold projects. And that was a time when I learned about lithium. You remember in 2011, it was when Elon Musk and Tesla said that they want to sell 100,000 electric cars, the Model S at that time, in the following year, 2011. Which unfortunately never happened. But I liked the story, and so I got invested into lithium and into Harbecke lithium, and we were running it then for a few years. But we became then in this down cycle of commodities between 2013 and 2016, and we more or less put the project on hold for some time. And in 2016, this is probably why you also picked the title for my message today. There was a big report in the Economist saying lithium is the new oil. And so early 2016, I was reading this, and then I was flying to China and spent some time in China to figure out if it's really the starting point, because the European car industry didn't want to hear anything about electric vehicles, but the Chinese were doing it, and Tesla was doing it. It was a time when the Model 3 was presented to the market in May 2016. And this was a time when lithium shares and the whole topic of lithium restarted, so 4 years ago. And the past 2 years were a little bit difficult, but it's all now coming.
What was the reservation on the European side? What was the problem with lithium and electrical vehicles?
Well, let's take VW as an example. Yeah, when you have like 200,000 employees, when you have an annual profit of 15 billion euros by selling 10 million cars per year, it is a huge risk to say you want to build electric cars. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting with the top management team of VW in July 2016. And more or less the guys were saying to me, you're an idiot that you are dealing with electric cars. We will never, ever build electric cars. Wow. And my answer at that time to them was, look, the Chinese have decided on this. And China is the most important car market in the world. So you are making 40% of your profits in China. And you're telling me you're not building electric cars. So since then, we have 2 shifts in management. So today's management has nothing to do at VW with the management team that was in power in 2016.
Wow. That was an interesting conversation.
Yeah. I was going to say, because I think every car company now has a full electric vehicle on their lot at some price point, right? They might not be the Teslas, but they might be just like a little city cruiser, but everyone is investing into that technology, right? Not only for the consumer, but for racing as well. And I know that's a big part with like Formula E gaining a lot of popularity. I know companies are dumping a lot of money into, how can we make this car go as fast as we can on, this battery life. And I think that's also a really, really key role in that shift in the market as well.
That'd be weird to have those Formula One cars coming by, and instead of that's loud as you can imagine, it's like you just hear gears like coming. There's no motor
it's just a hum,
sound.
Dude. It's a hum. It's a trip. If you ever watch it on TV, yeah, it's a trip.
feel the wind and you're like, whoa, that was exciting.
Yeah.
Wow. Mr. Dirk, sir, the stage is yours. Let's jump into your presentation and doctor us up. Take us to school. We are excited for what you have to present, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Of course, you're welcome. I'm very happy. So let me show you a little bit what happened in the past few years, more or less, in the lithium market and what it means today. And then we can also come to your questions about battery technology and about graphene and other things. What we are doing currently at Harbecke is we are building really a fully integrated producer of sustainable lithium. This is very important, by the way, because the car industry wants to go green. Neil was mentioning this before. This means that also the mining side has to be really green and more or less clean. It is a difference if you mine something in China or if we are mining something in North America, as we are going to do. What we have seen in the past more or less 12 months, is really a radical change in terms of international mobility. So on the one hand, I hope you can read on all the points also. On the one hand, it's of course a climate change discussion, but also much more in Europe and in China than you have it in North America. There's a lot of international regulation on pushing electric vehicles. So in Germany by now, you're getting a subsidy of 9,000 euros if you're buying an electric car. So you're buying a Tesla Model 3, which costs probably 35,000 euros. You got 9,000 subsidies and you only pay 26 for this anymore. So this is really a huge push for the market. Then interestingly, and this is important for investors, the second point is that although this market is growing like hell at the moment, you only have limited investments because it's a topic of the supply chains. So the car makers understand now that they have to invest in battery cells, so producing the batteries and the battery cells, but they're not yet investing in mines. And I'm pretty sure that this is going to change in the near future, probably with Tesla being the lead runner in this. And the third element, which is also different to all the other metals, is that we will see a regional supply chain. And this is also an effect of Corona, of course. The car makers pushing now e-mobility need to have the battery cells produced in their region. So the Europeans will have battery cells in Europe. I come to this a little bit later. And the Americans, of course, battery cells in the US. Yeah. The next chart, just briefly, these are the investments that are currently being announced by the major car makers, $300 billion just in electrification. You remember, I just said that VW made something like 15 billion profits. And these profits are for the moment gone due to Corona. And you see the industry is investing 300 billion in e-mobility. So this is a very strong statement that we are seeing here. Yeah. For you to look a little bit into this, what the value chain is, what I'm talking about. At the beginning, you have raw materials. You have lithium, you have cobalt, you have nickel. You build then the cathodes and the anodes out of this. And especially at the moment, the anode is mostly out of graphite, not graphene, but graphite. And then you produce the battery cells by putting anode and cathode together and have some additional elements. And then you have eventually the battery packs that are actually in the cars. The big problem that we are facing in North America and in Europe is that China is completely controlling the market. You see this here on the left-hand side. Although China has only 30% of the mines in the country, all the refinery, which means building the lithium and the cobalt products that go eventually into the battery cell, is coming out of China. So the Chinese are controlling this market, and this has to change. Otherwise, this dependence will not be acceptable, especially when you look into the US at the moment, with an upcoming trade war between China and your country. It's quite a tricky situation. You don't want to be that dependent on China. The next chart is showing you a little bit what is happening in Europe. So currently there are around 15 gigafactories, and you have all heard of the gigafactory of Tesla. Yeah? These are factories of that size that are being built only for the production of batteries. And there will be worldwide announced battery mega factories are 158. Yeah, these are all factories that have each the size of like 10 soccer fields. These are huge factories. So this is changing the world.
Sorry to interrupt, Dirk. I got a question though. So you have the supply, meaning where you're getting it out of the earth. You have processing, and then you have locations for the gigafactories. Those are all three different locations.
That is very often correct, because the production currently takes
Whoa.
place of lithium originally takes place in Latin America and in Australia. We are building a mine currently in Canada, and in the US there are also a few projects. Neil has mentioned a project earlier today, right? So there will be projects coming up, and it will be important that we have regional projects. In North America, this opportunity is there. In Europe, it is not there. The European lithium projects are far too small. So Europe will be depending on lithium supply from friendly countries, which is the US, Canada, maybe Australia, but it will be mostly Western countries in my point of view.
Wow, that's really expensive and incredibly challenging. Is it easier to build I'm going to already ask my question. It's probably easier to build a gigafactory than it is a processing plant.
Probably the answer is yes. Both is very complex.
Let's build them both. Where do we have someone building a processing plant and a gigafactory on top of each other? Just some skyscraper, is that happening? Well, is there a location that's...
It's not yet happening. The interesting situation currently is that the car makers have understood that battery mega factories are necessary. And let me put some figures behind this. Let's say a regular battery mega factory that's out of this 158 costs around 2 to 3 billion US dollars. And to build a lithium chemicals plant to produce the lithium that is necessary for this costs probably around 500 million. So the investment is a bit smaller, but still a very significant investment. And the car makers haven't understood fully the situation around lithium, also around cobalt, that we will see shortages very soon. It will be a very interesting segment.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
These shortages you are seeing actually on this next chart. What you see there on the right-hand side, the bars on the bottom, this is what is the expected production in the coming 10 years. And when you're dealing with mining, you cannot bring a mine into life in 1 year. You always have a lead time of 6 to 8 years, probably.
Wow.
And this is why we know exactly what is happening in the coming years. The only unknown thing is the topic of recycling. But recycling is still at the beginning, and for recycling, you need two elements. You need, first of all, batteries to go back into recycling, and we are just producing the cars and the batteries. So these batteries will not be there for recycling before 8 or 10 years. Yeah, so will be used the next few years. And secondly, batteries, especially lithium, is highly reactive. And that makes it interesting and important for a battery, but this makes it also different to separate. But we will need recycling. Without recycling, in a few years' time, we will not have enough lithium to produce new batteries. Yeah, this will be very important.
Wow.
And you see also the demand curves here. And I've put in 2 demand curves of a time difference of 6 months. And you see the demand is constantly increasing. This is an expected demand based on real figures of the car makers on how many electric cars they aim to build. And you see that there's a huge demand gap coming up from 2021 already. And this will be serious. And latest in a few months' time, we will see significant investments into the lithium sector with the immediate effect on share prices, of course, and on project development. So I've never seen something like this in my career before, I can tell you. And it will be very fascinating to observe this in the coming months.
Wow. Do you have any concerns of the cart possibly being in front of the horse here? You pointed out recycling as a technical issue, the kind of the volatility of dealing with lithium in itself, and building these factories and trusting that, these engineers are actually putting this together at the safest possible way without catastrophic failure in the future. Do you have any concerns at all at this point with our technical ability around the globe to supply this need?
Well, I am personally sure that we will see a significant growth in electric vehicles. So this is clear. One key reason is that the key car makers have to fulfill the CO2 requirements, especially in the European Union and in China. And there will be huge fines if they are not following this. When I say huge fines, this is a few $1 billion per year as a fine. So they have no choice but to build electric cars. The investments into the battery cells itself is significant, but we are talking about a process that takes many, many years. You were mentioning graphene before. There are graphene batteries currently being developed, but I tell you, from the moment that a battery is working on a lab scale in a university lab, until this comes to a market, it takes between 15 and 20 years. The reason is that the upscaling of small technologies into higher production levels is extremely difficult. Plus, you need to do millions of tests with these products. Imagine you have a new graphene battery at your ear when you're with your mobile phone, right? You don't want this to explode. So there's a lot of testing going on. And in terms of practicability, it is pretty clear that in the next 20 years, the key technology will be lithium-ion batteries, the batteries that we are currently having. And the next technology that is being announced, but not for next year, but for end of this decade, will be a so-called solid-state battery. And the interesting thing with solid state is that then the anode, where I just said it is currently graphite, will probably be replaced by a lithium metal. So you will even need more lithium in this, but probably less graphite. So this is also a key trend that we are seeing in battery technology over the next 10 years. And elements like graphene, by the way, graphene, you cannot mine this directly. So there was a question before. There are no graphene mines. Graphene is being produced mostly out of graphite. You put this into a chemical plant and you produce this artificial graphene out of this so that you get this very light and perfect structure. Yeah. So probably what you had in your hands, Troy, is probably a drill core of graphite. Exactly. That's graphite. Well, I can just see it visually, right? And not graphene, because it looks like a drill core, but I'm not 100% sure.
No, 100% sure. This is graphene. We got the
okay.
Graphene dominated graphite is the technical definition I have for this, based on Raman spectra.
But,
so it is.
But I just to interrupt here again. So, Dirk, where do you see the limiting factor being within this massive supply gap? Is it the lithium or is it the cobalt? Like,
it's a very interesting point. Let me come to the next chart on this.
Oh, perfect transition.
What you see here, and this presentation I can also share with you. So if there are people here in the audience who would like to have this, no problem, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
What you're seeing here are the 4 key battery metals. I call them key battery metals because this is what is mostly needed for the production of a battery cell, right? Which is lithium, which is graphite, which is cobalt, and which is nickel. Copper is more or less in the production eventually of the electric engine, yeah, and in the new production of the chassis of a car. So copper will also be needed much more, but copper doesn't go directly into the battery cell. This is why I haven't listed it here. And you see the growth rates, the CAGR, the compounded annual growth rate, which is here expected to be 18% for lithium. And for all of these metals, it is extremely high. What I'm seeing as the biggest shortage, but even this is very difficult to judge. In my point of view, it will be lithium, but also the expansion here in graphite and in cobalt is quite substantial, because cobalt, you don't find primary cobalt mines in the world. Cobalt normally comes in combination with nickel. This is why you see also here in the chart, it says that nickel supply has to go up in the nickel mining. And so when you're producing nickel, many nickel mines have cobalt as a byproduct, yeah, which is then needed. Currently, this means in battery technology that the battery makers are trying to get cobalt out of the battery because it will be very difficult eventually to fulfill these demand requirements. But as I said before, battery tech takes some time. Tesla has now produced batteries without cobalt, so it is starting, but eventually it will take probably up to end of this decade, yeah, until this is really jumping in.
Wow. So I got a question from the audience here from you, Dirk, and this is from the Brian Bottoms. Are the most prospective areas for future lithium extraction from brines or from spodumene deposits?
It is a very good question. It depends very much on extraction technologies. Currently, let me start with a different way. 4 years ago, 100% of the global lithium came out of the lithium brines out of Latin America, China, Argentina and Chile and Argentina. Today, only 40% of the global lithium supply is coming from brines. The rest is coming from Australia, currently from Harbecke lithium. Because the spodumene, and I show you a photo later of our deposit, there you see how this kind of spodumene geological dikes are looking like, right? This is easier to extract and to work with, because spodumene, you have like a 1% lithium content on this in the ground. In the brines, you usually have maximum 0.1, mostly 0.05. So it's much, much lower content. And eventually, to keep it simple, you want a 100% pure lithium product. Yeah. Now, getting from 0.1 in these brine water, in these salt waters, into 100% is quite a complex story.
Yeah.
Good question.
Awesome. Keep them coming, audience. Keep them coming.
Yeah, just jump in anytime. As an example for what we are doing at RockTech, because your question, this question was very good from the audience. Yeah, normally when you're in the lithium industry, you separate two segments here. So one segment is really the pure production, like us getting lithium out of the ground. This is pure mining, right? And then you get it out of the ground with 1% concentrate. You with 1% lithium content, you concentrate it to 6%, and then you build a so-called converter, which is this lithium chemical plant that I mentioned before that costs around 500 million US dollars investment, right? But in both fields, even now, although the lithium market was really in a bad shape in the past 2 years, but still the margins are relatively good. We still make 40% margins or so on both elements, on the chemicals element and also on the pure mine production, right? And imagine now if this demand situation is really coming as we forecasted here, the lithium prices will jump significantly, and then you have margins between 100 and 200%. It's a very, very promising business. And to show you how it looks like, concretely, what you see in the middle here, this is where our project is in Ontario, just at the Lake Superior, and it's a northern lake. And you see in this maps that says Chicago, right, and Michigan, and you know that in Michigan there are the factories of Detroit and General Motors, and you might have seen that in the last week the share price of General Motors was going up significantly based on a speculation that they might split off their electric cars division, put this segment as a separate company, as a subsidiary of General Motors, and maybe even places on the stock exchange, just the electric cars division. And now you see where the fantasy is in the car industry, because Tesla's market cap here is, I think by now, 50% higher than the market caps of our big German car producers together. Imagine this. So Tesla is worth much more than VW, Daimler, and BMW together. And these guys are producing 15 million cars per year, and Tesla is producing, I don't know, 650,000, something like this. And here you see a speculation on the future. And so North America will need its own lithium, and we are trying to be part of this. And on the left-hand side, you see one of these, what we call dikes. You see that the geology there differs massively from the surrounding land with the forest there, right? So these are massive blocks. These are outcrops that you can see, and there we have like on average 1% lithium in this, yeah, and it goes like 1.5 kilometers long, and it goes like a few 100 meters deep, yeah, and this is how you're mining it. And then you're building as a second step. So this is one side, the mining. And what you see here is an original picture from lithium hydroxide. This is a key product for future batteries, converter in China. So I visited these converters recently in China, and you see this, the sheer size of this factory. Yeah? This is what you need to really produce a battery grade lithium. And these are the plants that cost you a few $100 million. And on the right hand side, these packs, this is where lithium hydroxide is in. So it looks like a pack of cement, more or less, right? This is how you're shipping it, how you're transporting it, just to give you a certain idea about what we are talking about. So this was a short summary of what I wanted to show you as an introduction to a certain extent what this market means.
Oh, it was a hell of an introduction, sir. Thank you.
That was fantastic. I mean, from very little, basically no experience in the lithium market to hearing that was fantastic. And I think most of the audience would agree. Or do we have any other questions?
We got a question from Stan Keith in the room over here. Pull the microphone down. Before you get into your question, Stan, I was noticing a convenient coincidence, if you will, with the General Motors and the location of that lithium mine. And then now, so for something to totally work, you got to have the supply, the raw material. You got to have the processing. You got to be able to build the gigafactory, and you got to have client. You got to have customers. You got to have a way to move that to the transaction of a sale. So that is all happening in your location of General Motors right there, just north of the border. I mean, that is a interesting coincidence that General Motors is almost like ready to go, is the way you put it. Do you see it the same, Dirk?
Yes. It will take some time, of course, to get the market acceptance for electric vehicles. So General Motors is not selling 2 million electric cars next year, but they're fully committed to switch totally in the next 15 years towards electric. So we will most likely see a market share of electric vehicles in the total car sales globally of probably 15% by 2025. This means in figures, every year there are like 95 million cars being sold, new cars, of course. So that we will probably see 15 million electric vehicles being sold in the year 2025. So this is in 4.5 years, right? And currently they are around 2 million per year. So this is a significant increase, and General Motors is fully betting on this now.
Wow. All right, Mr. Keith.
Okay, I got a couple comments. One that you're absolutely right about. There are no graphene mines out there, and even with respect to what Kaufmuell's doing, where they're reprocessing African graphite, we looked at the ramen of what they're processing into these worms, and it's still graphite. It doesn't have a good disordered structure
based on the ramen signature stuff.
Yeah, and what my question ultimately is that this thing we have in Western Arizona, the graphene to graphite ratio of that black stuff in that core is 1.1. And do you know anything about, and I doubt it because there's not a lot of research on this, if you were to take just that raw material, concentrated graphene dominated graphite, what does that have for implication for batteries? Does that perform better than regular graphite, or worse, or what?
It is a very difficult question. So to be straightforward, I cannot fully answer this because battery technology is a very, very complicated topic, and it takes billions of investments to just improve slightly the life of a battery. It's significant investments. So graphite is having issues because you mentioned this in comparison to graphene because of its conductivity. I doubt that lithium will go out of the battery because lithium has a very high energy density, which is very important here. It can store a lot of energy. Yeah. It is difficult to say for me at the moment how you can set up a mass production of graphene and how they're difficult and expensive, especially how expensive this is. Keep in mind that you want to have the same prices or lower prices of electric vehicles that you have in the current combustion engine cars. So if you produce new batteries that are too expensive, it will not work out.
Right.
So these things will come to the market when they are fully approved and when they are also cheap enough.
Yeah.
Wow. So
Economics.
right. The transition in economics too, with this graphene and this idea. We got Skippo.
Oh, we got another question from D. Brian Bottoms. And this is actually something that I wanted to ask. So
Let's hear it.
spot on. So if the prices of lithium is forecasted to rise, and are there prospective brines that are being looked at that will be economic in the future? And then even better, and this is something that we have a lot of experience in, these brines are already considered waste in the oil field with these unconventional wells that are enriched in lithium and are just being disposed in disposal wells by the oil and gas industry. I know there's some companies on the East Coast that are doing this with the Marcellus brines, is they're extracting all the lithium from that and using it. But are there,
Louisiana.
yeah, exactly. And then, so yeah, sorry, that was a loaded question, but kind of to recage it, are there brines that are being looked at that are economic in the future?
This is currently quite a big element of research. When you remember the charts that I've shown about the demand-supply gap, we have to assume that this gap will somehow be filled. Otherwise, the whole car industry would not continue to work. So you have to assume that more and more money will go into these extraction technologies. The answer at the moment is that you have for example, for your oil, no commercially working extraction technology. But to answer the question if this might be different in a few years' time, it's very challenging. You have a lot of patents in this field. You will have companies in that field that are developing new processes that are working on the lab scale and that are currently being put on a pilot scale for testing. And afterwards, you have to put this on an industrial scale. They will file their own patents. There's a lot going on at the moment, but it's very difficult to say here when this is coming. Our experience is that these things take quite some time in the lithium industry, but it will not take 20 years. But it will also not take 2 years.
Yeah.
Great question. Great question. What is the economic impact that we could potentially provide with the lithium craze to the oil and gas industry, which is stable, it's ready, it's making money, even at today's dollars? Can you increase the economics of that business by plopping down a processing plant that's already built around this facility? It's already got a lot of this infrastructure. It seems like it's possible. But you clearly are raising good comments and questions to that too, and how fast that can happen. We need it tomorrow or yesterday, but we'll go with what we got.
Yes, it's you know what, in this industry, when you want to earn money, it is a lot about pragmatism, because you're talking to the car industry and to battery cell producers, and these are huge corporations. They are not changing their technologies every day. Once they have decided on one technology, they are sticking to this for at least 15 years, because it's a lot of investments in their plants, in their machinery, right? Even if a better technology is showing up during that time, they are using this then for the next generation. But here you really have to think about what is currently announced, what is happening, and invest in this. Everything else is a sort of speculation.
Right. And I like speculation. So my last comment for you, Mr. Harbecke, is, in your opinion, if you were to just lay out the world and you're now looking at the technical departments that are making up that $300 billion investment into the switch to EV, in your opinion, where or which company is progressing the most when it comes to R&D, research and development? Is there a company, in your opinion, that's actually taking a little bit of that cash and putting it into graphene development, or something that is maybe next level? Yeah, it's 20 years away, but they're actually working on it today. Do you have any comments on that?
There's a clear answer. I'm pretty sure that Tesla is doing this. So a main reason for the market cap of Tesla, it's really that it's a very innovative company. It was betting against all odds. It was really changing this industry, the car industry, and it might also change the battery industry. So probably when you look at the whole market cap of Tesla, I would say that minimum 50% of the total market cap is based on the battery cell production know-how and research and development that Tesla is putting into this. The German car makers are not looking too deeply into these battery technologies, definitely not. So the answer is clearly Tesla.
Wow, very cool. Well, Skips, you got anything else for Mr. Dirk before we let him go and we get into the rocks?
I think that was a phenomenal transition into what we're going to be doing next. That's all I'm going to say, because I think lithium is also one of those things that does cross the lines between hard rock and soft rock geology. And oh, Dirk, you're getting a lot of praise from the audience. So
thank you very much.
They loved it. They absolutely loved it. But yeah, I think that was just a great way to end it, and we can transition into the next thing. If you got any more comments, then yeah, Dirk, any final thoughts or anything you want to leave us with?
I said everything that is needed. Thanks a lot, guys. It was really fun to be with you, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Right on, Dirk. Thank you so much.